Welcome back to Lost Task Channel. My name is Anton Bieltsin. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the Southern District of California here in San Diego. You're now watching the 7th video in a multi-part series dealing with conspiracy law. In the first video, I gave you an overview and a roadmap where we're headed. Since then, we've chatted about Pinkerton liability, the elements of the crime. We also talked about joinder and maybe strategic severance between different co-conspirators and their trials. And in the last video, we started talking about the fun stuff, defenses. And now moving on with more defenses, today we're going to discuss mere presence as a defense to the charge of conspiracy. Thank you for joining me once again in discussing conspiracy law. In this multi-part series, we're always discussing independent cases. So it is okay for you to watch this video and watch the whole series out of order. But after you finish the 7th part, maybe go back to part 1 and watch it from the beginning if you're just joining us. In this video, we're discussing a mere presence defense. We're talking about United States versus Viegas in 1990 case. In this case, 3 individuals, Rodrigo, Jairo, and Mr. Viegas, were charged with a conspiracy to distribute narcotics. Now, Rodrigo and Jairo took the case to trial, and they lost. After they lost at trial, they appealed it to the circuit court, where they argued that there's insufficient evidence to hold them responsible on the conspiracy charge. So here's what was proven at trial against Mr. Rodrigo. He agreed to supply Mr. Viegas with 17 kilograms of cocaine. He borrowed Viegas' red van to meet with 2 other co-conspirators. He waited for Viegas' messenger, Duque, to arrive at Rodriguez' home. There, we know that the drug transfer actually occurred, and it occurred in Rodrigo's closed door garage, which was attached to his home. He then followed DQ to a mall in the red van that he borrowed for the drugs to be transferred to another vehicle. And then later he picked up a buyer and drove him to that other vehicle so the buyer could inspect the cocaine. Based on this evidence, the circuit court holds that Rodrigo is in fact guilty of conspiracy to distribute narcotics. Do you still remember the definition that I gave you in part 1 and 2 of a conspiracy? It is an agreement between 2 or more people to commit an underlying offense. So the underlying offense here is, of course, the distribution of narcotics. And we can see the agreement between Viegas and Rodrigo to sell these narcotics. There's all this evidence that I just described. And so the circuit court says, of course there's sufficient evidence that a jury would find him guilty of conspiracy to distribute narcotics. But not so fast with Mr. Jairo. Here's the evidence that we have against him. And the circuit court actually says this is the worst scenario. He was seen by Duque at his brother's house. Well, that's no surprise. If your brothers or sisters, your siblings, that you possibly live in the same residence, or at least you would visit your sibling at that residence. Nothing illegal here. He walked outside of the house one time and looked to the left. We know that from the officers. They're saying that he was doing countersurveillance. He was walking out of the door and looking to the sides. But of course, again, we know that Jairo is Rodriguez' brother. So there's nothing criminal about walking out of the house and looking around. He then drove his Pontiac and followed Rodriguez' van, the one that was borrowed, to the mall. He parked the car with the hood up. He later explained at trial that he did that because his Pontiac was overheating. But the officers say that's not true because later on he got into the vehicle and drove off. Of course, the jury can look at it both ways. After all, he spent about 40-45 minutes inside the mall, simply walking around. The government said this is the evidence that he's doing counter-surveillance. But the circuit court says that there's insufficient evidence to hold him responsible. After all, mere presence is insufficient to establish that he knowingly participated in a conspiracy, as is mere association with co-conspirators. Think about it. Just because we know that Jairo was at the house and later at the mall, and the fact that he's associated, he's brothers with Rodrigo, doesn't necessarily mean that he agreed and joined in the conspiracy. Until the government can prove that agreement, Jairo cannot be held responsible on the conspiracy charge. Hopefully you now understand a little bit more about mere presence defense and how it works. There are plenty of cases out there that describe this sort of defense, and here's one of them. If you like this video, please click like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so next time I post, you'll be first to know. Thanks for watching.